Found them?
Mitchell, how are you?
How are you, Mitch? And you're on time. Mashiach's coming. You're on time. Well, I don't know what to do with myself.
Go get to it. That is really. Yeah. You got it. I mean, I got a city. This one.
Check verse 9. Okay, we are live. I'm just going to share it on two other platforms, and then we will get rolling. We're going to start today on page 502 in the Life Chumash, if you have it. Oh, you know, Still no sign of Robert and Seth. Who knows what? Maybe. Did we find him? Baruch Hashem. It was a case of a missing rabbi. Why do you want for someone from California? It's not easy. Good evening, Jane. What a beautiful crowd in-house and online. What a beautiful gathering of Jews. We are going to get started, page 502 in the portion of the Tzava. And we begin, I'll leave it up to those, if you come to Shul on Shabbos, or if you're studying the Parsha with Rabbi Gordon, or you're studying the Parsha on your own. There's a lot of the Parsha that everyone gets to on their own, that there's the part of the Parsha that everyone is used to or more accessible to all. And then there's always the parts of the Parsha that are not expressed in length. And what we're going to do tonight is try to tackle some of that and get to a better understanding, of course, based on, especially when we get to the mystical parts of it, based on the teachings of the Rebbe. So on page 502, or actually in English 503, it talks about the apron. And the only reason it's called the apron is because there's no word in English for this particular garment. In Hebrew, it's called the ephod or ephod, but it's the best translation is a backwards apron, where it would be like an apron except put backwards, and that's how if you look in those translations, you'll see that. So it says they should make the apron of gold thread, turquoise, purple, and crimson wool, and twisted fine linen, the work of a professional weaver. So like everything else in the tabernacle, it was a masterpiece with artisans really doing beautiful things. It should have two connected shoulder straps at both of its ends. The strap should be first woven separately and then connected to it. Its decorative belt, which is above it, should be made from it, woven professionally at one single piece out of gold thread, turquoise, purple, and crimson wool, and twisted fine linen, which is why, by the way, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, looked like that's why we say on Yom Kippur that when the Kohen would walk out, the Kohen Gadol would come out of the Holy of Holies. There was nothing like it. It looked like the most magnificent sight you'd ever see, because between the colors and the shining glow from his face, it was something out of this world, right? We have that song we sing on Yom Kippur, Mare Kohen, which is the look of the Kohen. It was like anything you could think of in the realm of beauty, anything you could think of in the realm of an artisan masterpiece, that's what the Kohen Gadol looked like. But then it says you should take 2 shoham stones and engrave upon them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the second stone in the order of their birth. So right here on the shoulders of the high priest, connected to that apron that was coming from the back, there were straps that eventually would connect to the breastplate, and it had two stones, very expensive stones, and the names of the 12 tribes were inscribed or engraved on those two stones. So first of all, it's interesting that when it came to the items donated for the garments of the high priest and the priests, it went straight to the artisans. Just as a side note, this is not the direction of tonight's class. I just think it's interesting that when it came to the donations for the garments of the priests, the Jews that donated brought it straight to the artisans that were going to make it, the people that are going to weave it, the people that are the professionals to make it, the craftsmen. When it came to the items for the building of the tabernacle itself, you didn't bring it to the artisans, you brought it to Moses, then Moses would take it to the artisans. So why, when it came to the building of the actual tabernacle, right, that you bring it to Moshe as the middleman and he would bring it to the Jews, to the artisans, and when it came to the garments, they brought it straight to the artisans. Says the Rebbe that when you're building a tabernacle for God, it has to all go through Moshe, so it shouldn't be individualized. Everyone puts it into the same pot, and then they go build a tabernacle. The garments, it didn't matter as much, but when you're building the actual structure, that's going to be a rectification, it's going to be forgiveness for the sin of the golden calf. You can't have one Jew say, hey, you know that beam there? I donated that beam. I gave it straight to the guy and he put it right. It's all into the same pot. No one could have personal ownership. There's no individuality when you're building a tabernacle because it's to atone for the sin of the collective. Therefore, it needs to be a collective structure. The garments doesn't matter. You're making individual clothing for priests anyhow. So going through Moshe is not as important. But to create the collective, you need to go to the leader, which is Moshe, representing all of the Jews. And he can create the collective structure of forgiveness and atonement, which is what the Mishkan was. That's a side commercial message. But today I want to talk about the actual the two stones, the Shoham stones with the names of the tribes that were on the shoulder of the high priest. Rashi says, and I quote, he says it was put onto the 6 tribes on each shoulder. It says Kisol Doisam. They were put onto the shoulder according to the order of their birth. And then Rashi says, Kiseder Shenoildu. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, and Naphtali were on one side. And on the second one, Rashi says, Gad and Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, Yosef, and Binyamin. And then Rashi tells us how to spell Binyamin. You should spell it with both Yuds. That's a separate discussion. But the question really is, before we get anywhere further, why does Rashi have to, if Rashi just told us that we have to do it in the order of their birth, that should be enough. You just go back to the book of Genesis, look at the order of the birth of the tribes, and you know what the order is. Why does Rashi have to enumerate for us the names of the tribes? It seems very superfluous to mention the names of the tribes. Just say it was in the order of their birth. We know the order of the birth, call it a day. Yet Rashi finds it important to tell you, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, and Naphtali on one, Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, Yosef, and Binyamin on the other. It seems very unnecessary, considering that we already know the order of their birth. Well, reminding who? Rashi? Rashi in the 10th century is reminding us that what?
I don't know why that's there.
In the verse or in Rashi?
In the royal.
Rashi doesn't tell us the names. Rashi just says 6 on one and the other 6 on the other. And Rashi says it's the way the order of those 6 and 6 is in the order of their birth. And then he enumerates who they are by the number. We should know already what the order is. So, what the Rebbe says is as follows. It doesn't say by the first 6 that you should do it in the order of their birth. It says you should do 6 on one stone and 6 on the other according to the order of their birth. Which means, if Rashi wouldn't give us the warning, you could have thought that only the other 6, the second 6, have to be listed in the order of their birth. But the first 6 perhaps will be listed in the order of their royalty, in the order of their importance. Because the way the verse is structured is that the word kisel daisam, which means in the order of their birth, is only mentioned after the second stone. And Rashi wants to make sure you shouldn't get caught up in that idea of thinking that there's a split, that on one stone, you're doing it in the order of their importance, and the other stone, you're doing it in the order of their birth. So Rashi forewarns and says, this is the order. And it's interesting because if you look at the second batch of the stones, it says, Even in the English, it translates 6 of their names on the one stone, and the names of the remaining 6, Hanoisarim. It sounds almost like they were the leftover 6. Literally. And so, if you read that and you say, hold on, if these are the leftover tribes, right? Then maybe on the first stone, you're doing it according to their importance. And the leftover tribes, you go according to their birth because they're nobodies anyhow. So Rashi wants to make sure you don't think that way. You should recognize that on both stones, it's going according to the order of their birth. And so then if that's the case, then why does the verse say the others, right? Hanaisarim, the names of the remaining ones? No, she wasn't a tribe. This is because it's not they were secondary in any type of stature. It's just that they were, when it says they're remaining, it's that they were, if you look at the story of how they came to be, it was almost like a secondary story, right? You had the first batch of tribes, right? You had Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, those first 4 of Leah's children, right? And then you had Dan and Naphtali. And Dan and Naphtali from Bilhah, very good. They were the bonuses that Leah, she wanted to have extra kids from her maid. I'm sorry, Rachel didn't have any children. So she had 2 children through Bilhah. So those were the 6. Everything over there was part of the structure. Leah has 4 children. Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, Rachel's maidservant, has 2 children on her behalf. And then what happens? Suddenly you have the second batch, which is, as we read in Parshas Vayetze in Genesis, you have Gad and Asher, which is Zilpah's maidservant, who says she wants to have, right? They were bonuses already for Leah. She saw that Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, had 2. She said, you know what, I need 2 also. So it's not that they were secondary, the way they came about was not in the order of the way things were happening. It was almost like a second idea that came later. And then you had Yisachar and Zvulun, which happened to Leah later on. They were considered to be, she already had her portion. Suddenly she's having more than her portion. Now she has 6 of her own children. She has Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. And now she also has Yisachar and Zvulun. And then, of course, eventually Rachel has her own children as well. Yosef and Binyamin. And so that's why the verse is structured in that way. But don't ever misunderstand that to mean that on one stone, we're going to go in the order of importance, and the second stone, we're going to go in the order of birth. It's simply a structural matter, but they all go in the order of their birth. Now, why did I spend all this time dissecting this Rashi about how vital Rashi sees it to tell us that it was in the order of their birth? Because Rashi is not the only commentator on the Torah. And we have,
This is my birthday.
We're going to get to your birthday, don't worry. You have to hang tight. If you ask too many times, it loses the surprise, the excitement. So,
well, I'm excited.
And so, in the Rambam, in 2 places in the Rambam, it's also mentioned the Orach Chaim and various commentators, but let's go with the Rambam because he's the most primary sage that has this disagreement with Rashi. The Rambam says unequivocally that the stones did not have the names of the tribes by the order of birth. He said the names of the tribes were engraved on the Shoham stones divided by who their mother was, by the matriarch. So first you had on one stone all of Leah's children, which is Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun on one. And then you had Bilhah's 2 sons, so Dan and Naphtali. You had Leah's sons, you had Bilhah, then you had Zilpah's sons, Gad and Asher, and then you had Rachel, Rachel's sons, Yosef and Binyamin. So now, I know someone's going to pop up here with a question in a minute, either on Zoom or in person. How can they argue about what happened? You can argue about something like that. None of us were there. There's 2 commentaries that discuss it. Obviously, we don't have the Shoham stones to inspect it. When Moshiach comes, we'll know. We do not have the Shoham stones. But in the meantime, we have this incredible difference between Rashi.
Is she in your room?
Yeah.
Please mute yourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Oh, there we go. We have an incredible discussion between Rashi and the Rambam. Not they didn't discuss it with each other because the Rambam lived way after Rashi, but they have this incredible difference in opinion about how the Shoham stones work. Rashi is going out of his way not only to emphasize, but to enumerate the order so that you never think that it was done by importance or by any other division. And Rambam, in more than one place, in his Pirush HaMishnayos, the Rambam has a commentary on the Mishnah, and then he has his Sefer Yad HaChazak, he has the Rambam that we study every day, the 14 books of Halacha, his codification of Jewish law and the laws of Kli HaMikdash and the laws of the vessels of the temple. He specifically enumerates again that it was not by the order of birth, but divided by the matriarchs. First Leah's children, then Bilhah, Zilpah, and Rachel. And that is a kind of a very, very big difference. Now, if you go to some yeshiva in, I don't know, New York, New Jersey, somewhere where they don't have the beauty of the Rebbe's teachings and the beauty of Chassidus, you'll say, big deal. Rashi and the Rambam argue about a lot of things. Just call it a day. There's an argument. But our Rebbe never let us do that. There's an argument, and all sections of the Torah are interconnected. There's no such thing as the exoteric and the esoteric, the mystical and the practical of Judaism being disconnected. They're all interconnected. So we have to find out what is the reason, what's the deeper layer for why Rashi and the Rambam would have such a different opinion. So, exactly, peel the onion. So, the goal of inscribing the names of the tribes on the Shoham stones, it says in the verse, Lizikaron. It's a reminder. What does that mean? As Rashi says, that when Hashem looks down and sees the high priest, or looks up, wherever Hashem is, he looks at the high priest's garment, he sees the names of the tribes, the Yiskar Tzidkasam, he remembers the righteousness of the tribes. So, when Hashem is looking at the Shoham stones, what message are we as a Jewish community via our high priest trying to show Hashem? We're trying to show Hashem, look, all 12 tribes, we're all together. We're all on the same two stones. We're united. There's no greater thing for any parent than to see their children united. The worst thing a parent would ever want to see is their children divided, which is why machloikus, division amongst Jews and amongst humanity, is considered the most despised thing. Because what are you fighting over? Your Father in heaven said, please don't fight, and you're fighting and you're using him as the excuse. It's the worst type of fight when you use God as the excuse for the fighting. So when Hashem looks down and sees the two Shoham stones and he sees the names of all the 12 tribes, it's supposed to remind Hashem how united the 12 tribes of Israel are and make him shower more and more blessings to the Jews. Now, there's two ways that we become united as a people. I know in America today, everyone likes talking about the patriarchy. It's a fancy word that they talk about, the thing that men have too much power. But today I'm having the patriarchy and the matriarchy. There's two ways that the Jewish people are united, either by the patriarch Jacob, or by the matriarchs, the four matriarchs of the Jewish people, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, but it's expressed through the 12 tribes. What I mean by the patriarchy, by Jacob, is that you could either look at the 12 tribes of Israel and say, you know what? They're all one. You know why they're all one? Because they have the same father, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob. I don't care about the differences. No differences, right? So I'm going to put them, how am I going to put them on the stones? In the order of their birth. It's not relevant which part. We'll put some of Leah and then two of Zilpah. I'm sorry, two of Bilhah and then Zilpah with some of Leah's and Rachel on the second one. We'll mishmash them together because it's all about the unity created by the patriarch, by Jacob, and that's all that matters. We're not going to focus on any differences between the people except for the fact what unites them. What unites them? Their father Jacob. There's another form of, you have a question?
So like in the Talmud study yesterday, there was the transfer of babies discussion in the appendix, where it talked about the halacha behind that, with Zilpah and the other handmaid Bilhah. Those were considered either Leah's or Rachel's offspring. Like we don't mention them in the four matriarchs.
Bilhah and Zilpah? They weren't matriarchs.
But they still
they mothered four of the Jewish tribes, but they were not part of the matriarchs.
Well,
They were what? What are you
they were
saying?
married. I said they worked for her.
They were concubines, but that's not even the point. Even though they were the mothers of the tribes,
But I might
they,
be,
they were represented. They were representative of Leah and Rachel.
I might be from the tribe of Dan. I wouldn't know what, that would be from a non-matriarchal line of Jacob.
First of all, okay, I don't know why you think you're from Dan and not Naphtali. I'm just pointing that out.
Naphtali.
So the answer, so again, in the world of spiritual concubine and the representation that Bill and Zilpah had on behalf of, it's a much longer discussion, but they were not individuals on their own. It was almost like the original form of surrogacy, but on a spiritual level and a much more so no one ever, they were associated with their birth mom, so to say, Bill and Zilpah, but that was not who their spiritual matriarch was. The ones that were born from Zilpah were associated with Leah, the ones that were born from Bilhah were associated with Rachel, and we'll leave it at that for now, but it definitely gives you room for more study. The second way of looking at unity is not that we're all equal because we're Jacob's descendants, but that we go by the matriarch as well, which means if I'm one of Leah's children and I go with Leah, I'm connected to Leah and that group of kids that are Leah's kids. If I'm from Bilhah, then I'm connected to Bilhah. If I'm from Zilpah, I'm connected to Zilpah. If I'm from Rachel, I'm connected to Rachel. And if that's the case, I am looking at our differences and I'm saying, despite those differences, we're still one. We're still on the two stones here representing all the Jewish people. In other words, Rashi, says the Rebbe, wants to emphasize unity. And how does Rashi emphasize unity? By removing anything that might be considered division. What's dividing? Matriarchs. Because they have 4 different mothers in this picture. So what does Rashi do? He said, no, we're not going to consider that. We're going to put the order in according to the order of their birth, which means we're focusing only on what brings them together, which is their father Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, and that's all that matters. Because the only way, according to Rashi, that you can find unity is if you remove the obstacles to the unity, which is the division.
It still puts all the children of Leah on the one side. Just saying,
Right, so
dividing them from the rest of the children.
you're putting, no, first of all, it was not, according to Rashi, you don't put all the Leah on one side.
Yeah, he said,
You put the four Leah and 2 of Bilhah's.
Then you have.
but Bilhah's with
No, Bilhah's with Rachel. Yeah, the Rambam is the one that says that you do it in the order of the...
Are 2 different.
Halt cup! There you go. For those that were at JLI, I waited for, come on, now it was perfect timing. You brought up yesterday's class. So hold head. If I said it in English, touche. If I would have said it in English, no one know what I'm talking. Hold head, look kind of crazy. But then comes the Rambam. So basically, Rashi is saying that if you want to find unity, unfortunately, you got to remove anything that might be an obstacle to unity. So you remove the thing that divides them into 4 groups. You make it all about the one group, and then you just put them in the order of their birth. Comes along the Rambam and says, I have a higher level of unity that people should attain, people should look to. What's a higher level of unity? You recognize that we have differences. You don't ignore the differences. You recognize that there are real differences between people and between groups. And nevertheless, even though we have differences, you're Leah's kid and I'm Bilhah's kid, you're Zilpah's kid and I'm Rachel's kid, and therefore we have different attributes because characteristics, because you have different, first of all, you have different biology, different, hereditary stuff, but also spiritually, you represent different things. Leah was more of an outgoing woman, Rachel was more of a shy, insular woman, Bilhah and Zilpah had their own character traits, and so the kids were different. Anyone that says the 12 tribes of Israel are the same just has to read the story of Shimon and Levi and what they did to the city of Shechem, the city of Nablus, and you'll know that only 2 out of the 12 did that. And when you look at the story of Joseph and how he survived with what he endured in those 22 years in Egypt, you know that he was made of a different caliber because of Rachel being his mother. And when you see Judah being the leader that he was, Rachel was Joseph's mother.
Oh.
Judah being the leader that he was, and Levi being the Torah scholar that he was, every one of them had their own unique character traits. Says the Rambam, if you want to find human unity, the uniqueness of unity, if you want to find true unity, it's not by removing the obstacles that divide them. It's by recognizing that every group of people, every individual for that matter, but it's certainly every group of people has their uniqueness. And just because they're unique and they are genuinely unique, different than other groups, does not make them less of or other than. It just means they have something unique to them. And the beauty of humanity is when all those groups or people that have different representations, different character traits, different uniqueness come together and they put that aside and focus on the common denominator. Not having them is not unique. That's Rashi's approach, and it has its value, but it's not as beautiful. Today in America, everyone wants to, let's remove all divisions. We're all the same, as if that even could be. It's a Baba Maisa. It's simply impossible. It's impossible financially. It's impossible biologically. It's impossible religiously. It's impossible. You name it. It's impossible. God did not create the world where everyone's going to be equal. Equal rights, yes. But equal in reality is a Baba Mice. It's a fairy tale. Comes along the Rambam and says, so what? So what if society has different groups? Actually, it's beautiful. The Native Americans will do their sweat lodge. The Jews will fast on Yom Kippur and Tainus Esther. The Christians will put ash on their forehead for Ash Wednesday. Each one's got their thing to do. And then even amongst the Jewish community, I got a call. We're having a bris here on Friday in the shul. So the mother of the babies, the grandmother of the babies is Sephardi. She goes, do you have this custom? Do Ashkenazim have this custom where the baby wears like a white, almost like a white nightgown or robe that the baby wears during the bris? I said, I actually never heard of it. She said, do you think I said, let me call the moil. I said, could you buy one in New York? He said, I don't have to buy one. I have one. I bring it with me. The baby will have it. Beautiful. The beauty of Judaism is not that we're all exactly the same. Within the Torah world, as we learned in the JLI class and the Gemara, there's so many different facets of expression. Now, personally, I don't hide from it. I'm not embarrassed of it. I'm very proud of it to say that I think the most valuable way to serve God is to do it via the study of Chassidus with the guidance of the Rebbe of blessed memory. I have nothing to be shy about. I have nothing to be ashamed about. But do I think that if someone disagrees with me, but they're still a Torah observant Jew, praying 3 times a day, observing Shabbos and Mikveh and Kosher and Yontif, and going to shul and experiencing Judaism with their philosophy, whether it's Brisk or the Lithuanian way of learning or other Hasidic groups or modern Orthodox or Yeshiva, beautiful. There's so many beautiful ways to serve God. The Rambam is saying that if you want to find the true unity of the Jewish people, if you look at those 2 stones, it should not be listed in the order of their birth. It should be listed in the order of their mothers. 6 for Leah, then goes Bilhah, then goes Zilpah, then goes Rachel. And nevertheless, when God looks down and sees those 2 stones, he goes, you know what, my people are united, not because they don't recognize their differences. Right? There was a while in America that to express our unity, we use the rainbow. I'm not talking about the modern manifestation of that. I'm talking about even 30 years ago. They used the rainbow to show all the colors of the rainbow can come together. Today, they don't. They want the rainbow to be one color. Everyone should agree with everything that everyone says. Ababa Maisa. Who lives like that? And that's not unity. That's cloning. That's not unity. That's, I'll be nice to you if you agree with me. That's not unity. The Rambam is not really arguing with Rashi. What he's saying is to Rashi, my dear Rashi, right? He was later in history, the Rambam, so he can do that. It's like he's like the Rambam's writing a Dear Rashi letter. Dear Rashi, I love what you wrote about doing it in the order of their birth, but there's a higher form of unity as well. And really, we should consider that being the goal. What's the higher form of unity? That we don't discount people's differences. We celebrate the uniqueness and differences of other people. And despite those differences, instead of becoming envious and jealous and trying to quash their uniqueness, we celebrate it and recognize that what makes the Jewish people incredible is that we could have our differences and celebrate the same. Any of you that's been around here in the summer months when we have all the visitors, so Shabbos afternoon, either by Shalosh Shudas, by the 3rd meal, by after Mincha, or by lunch or Friday night, they want to sing their Zmiris. They want to sing their special hymns and songs that they sing on Shabbos, which is not in my tradition. With pleasure. Whatever your custom is. And then I announce after Mincha that in Chabad we have the custom to say ethics of our fathers per Avot all the way till Rosh Hashanah. Most Orthodox Jews don't have it. They just do it till Shavuos. But I invite them to do it and then I move on. Either join me or don't. It's not a world war. We don't say, okay, now I'm a jihadi and I'm going to kill you because you don't say Pirkei Avos in the summer. Or if you don't sing Zmiris with me, or if I don't sing Zmiris with you, I'm worthy of a death penalty. That's not the beauty. That's not unity. That's authoritarianism. That's people who have a low self-esteem, so they need everyone to agree with them because they don't really believe in they don't even know what they believe themselves at the core. So they want everyone to follow along. It's egocentric, it's arrogance, it's insecurity, it's all of that combined into one big mishmash. Right? You ever wonder why certain so-called open-minded rabbis, super open-minded, you mention the word Orthodox and they have a full-on conniption, like they're going into cardiac arrest. Why? What are you getting so bent out of shape? You're insecure. They have therapists for that. They even have pills. Take a couple Zoloft, Chaparine, go to a psychiatrist, get what you need. Nothing wrong with that. Half of America is taking it anyhow, maybe 3/4. Join the crew and stop being so insecure. Because to me, unity is about recognizing that not the whole world's going to think the way you do. They don't have to. And not even the whole Torah world will think the way you do. It took me many years, by the way, to come to that. When I grew up in Brooklyn, and you know, it's okay to be honest about it. And you grow up in every community in New York. I'm saying the tri-state area of New York. You grow up in, you know, in my community, it was Chabad. So if you weren't Chabad, it was like you were muktzah. You got to stay away from them. They're treif. How could they not?
Williamsburg.
How could they not? And Williamsburg thought that about Crown Heights. Crown Heights thought that about Flatbush. Flatbush thought that about Monsey. That's not Judaism. Judaism is the recognition that we truly are a rainbow. And the beauty of Judaism is that in the same shul on Shabbos here in the summer, you can have the whole rainbow in one room and somehow celebrate Shabbos with zest and vigor. Right?
Yeah, they come in and sometimes you'll see them head out to the corner, they'll do something.
Yeah, they have their own traditions and it's a beautiful thing. And so tonight, as we learn Parshas Tetzaveh and we think about the Shoham stones that were on the shoulders of the high priest, it's important to think about in our own lives, because we live in a very divisive country right now. And it's safe to say that last night was another manifestation of that. So whether you're on the side of the people who were sitting or the side of the people that were standing and clapping, neither side can disagree that we are very divided, because that was the manifestation of it. And in such a divisive society, it's very easy to get caught up with one side or the other and then justify it. Once you get caught up, you justify it. That other side is this, and that side is that. And together, the whole world is treif, and an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, and k'l'chaim v'levracha, you have a world going to hell. Comes along the Torah, perfect timing, the night after the speech. And the Torah is telling us, Habibi, my darling, Rambam says, dear Rashi, maybe it worked for some societies to ignore the differences in order to create unity. A better way to create unity is to recognize the differences, and despite, or maybe because of those differences, to celebrate the beautiful rainbow, the beautiful coexistence that can exist within the Torah Jewish community without us belittling. I still remember the Shabbos, we had a visitor here, it was 2 summers ago. Talk about never hearing a custom. This guy came from a Yekka community. The Yekkas were the real German Jews that followed old German Jewish tradition. There was a community of them in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and then Washington Heights in Manhattan, near YU, near Yeshiva University. And the guy came and looked like a normal Jew. Everything about him looked normal until it came time for the Shabbos meal at my house. And he washes for Hamotzi before Kiddush. I said, is everything okay? I've never heard of this in my life. No, a very small group of Ashkenaz, of Yekka, real Ashkenaz, right? So, see, he knows it. He's a senior rabbi from California. He's more diverse than me, obviously. I'm sitting here and I still remember the conversation. I was like, tell me more. It was fascinating. I didn't get mad at the guy. I helped him. I had to get him challah because he needed now to make kiddush on the challah. It was a fascinating, eye-opening experience because that is the beauty of Judaism. They don't make things up. We have different ways of understanding the same thing. He's still washing for Hamotzi. He's still making kiddush. The order is different than we do. Whoop-de-doo. For that, I have to fight with him? Should I take out my sword and go jihadi on him? Well, what is that? That is the beauty of Judaism. And if Jews, forget about the non-Jews, if we ourselves within our own communities, both in the diaspora and in Israel, maybe especially in Israel, can learn to realize the beauty of our people is our unique individuality, our world would look a lot healthier, our community would be a lot more united, and we'd get to Mashiach a lot quicker. And who wouldn't want that? I was once accused, do you know that the rabbi here in Bozeman thinks that Mashiach is going to come and they're going to build a temple in Jerusalem? It was on camera. And I said, I've been accused of a lot of things This one I take as a badge of honor. I'm being accused of Mashiach, that I want Mashiach to come. Who wouldn't want a world of tranquility and peace and unity? Who wouldn't want that? So tonight we also celebrate a birthday. Was it the 35th we said? From Gabriel ben David. What was your mother's Hebrew name?
Oh my God.
Do we remember Arlene's Hebrew name?
Yeah, it was something very similar to Chavi.
Oh, Chaya. That's right.
Chavala.
Oh, Chavala. So Chava. That's right. Chavala. That's right. So a very special birthday to Garl. I assume you'll be in Shul Shabbos to get an aliyah for your birthday. It's a very, very special thing. In our tradition in Chabad, we wish people on their birthday, they should have a shnas hatzlacha, they should have a year of success, bakol mikol kol, in all things, physically, materially, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It should be a year of an abundance. Hashem should shower you with His infinite blessings, you and your family. And as one of my friend rabbis who passed away, he was much older than me, had a good sense of humor. He used to say, May God bless you with all your heart's desires that are permitted by the code of Jewish law." Right? Not just the desires that are permitted. You know, your desires could be also not permitted, but all the ones that are permitted by Shulchan Aruch, by the code of Jewish law. That was Rabbi Moshe Gadlarsky. He used to say that, a wonderful comment. It should be a wonderful year, and we could all say Amen. Have a great evening. Great to see everybody, and we'll see you back here.